Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is David Brooks, the Cadillac counselor. And you know,
Oh,
I am still impressed with the Board of Education race. I've been watching. I think this is going to be a large amount of people, and I think that with my platform, I would like to let people speak and get their message out. I know when I ran. It was mainly the Frederick News Post or my websites or Facebook. And I really, really want to give them the opportunity to speak freely and to speak to you because I need you to go out and vote as soon as possible, as soon as they come out, mail them in, go and vote. Doesn't matter how you get it in, but we need your voice. And so today, I'm not going to take long for my part because I want to introduce Janae. And Miss Monet, she has I've looked at her website. I see a lot of good things for if she gets the chance to win. And if she does get to win, I think it's going to be because she is positive and she is focused on the children, parents, and the community. So without any further ado, I will pass it over to Miss Janae. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
hi. Well, I am a registered nurse from Johns Hopkins, but I'm living in, Frederick County. I have two young boys at the school, and I'm a PTA president, which is one of the ways that I was able to kind of get into the school and to see how it works, meet the teachers, understand a little bit better about how the school integrates with community. And in post-COVID, when I became PTA president, a lot of PTAs in schools were struggling to get families back in to the school, just to kind of see what was going on and how to integrate and get families and kids feeling comfortable again. So we've worked really hard to create events and opportunities for families to be in the school, volunteer either throughout the day or events to celebrate throughout the year. Ways to get involved in community projects like our blankets for the Ukrainian Children's Hospital last year. And we're doing it again, but with Project Linus starting this week, actually. So there's so that's kind of how I have been introduced to the school board and was asked to consider running. And when I think about how important my kids are to me and the school, they spend half their time at school. It's just like when we have a 40-hour work week or we're somewhere working, we're spending so much of our life there. It's another kind of family. And everybody should be able to go into that school and know that they're going into a supportive space. There's enough stress in this world as it is, right? They don't need more of that. And they need to go in, it's a supportive space, and that's how they're going to learn. And interventions that are early, if you have a kid that's struggling, whether it's behavioral or if it's a learning disability, or they need to be more challenged, maybe they're just not being challenged enough, whatever it is, there needs to be opportunities for parents and kids to get resources, figure out what's happening early on. That makes the biggest difference. And I know, for me, that's something I wish I had when I was growing up, a little bit more early intervention. So those are the things that really got me inspired to run and passionate about running and communicating with the community. I can't tell you how many PTA meetings I've been in, and I've just found out, hey, they're going over policy 400s and the at the board, and they're going to be making changes or not. Well, what does that mean? Well, if you are concerned about cell phone use in schools, bullying of your kids, whether they're allowed to use pronouns or not, that's all policy 400. So here's what we're going to do, folks. We're going to talk about it and we're going to start writing into the board and trying to organize that. And parents want to know, but they just don't know how to find out. So we got to figure out how to communicate better, with the families here. And that each district has its own unique needs. So what is might be great for the community that I'm in may not work perfectly for, say, Brunswick or Up County Frederick, right? So we need to look at those unique communities and really try to match their needs. And I
Good.
could keep going on, so I'm going to let you ask the next question. Sorry.
Well, I mean, you brought up the 400, and a lot of people are really worried about
Yeah,
especially cell phones. People are concerned about I hear all the time pronoun this, pronoun that,
right,
and it doesn't matter which side of the spectrum you're on, but it
right.
is a very hot topic. So with that being said, what is your opinion about the things that are in the 400?
So we talk about pronouns, and I actually had a great conversation with someone who was a Republican and then became a Democrat. So he's kind of in that sort of moderate centrist position in a sense, and really struggled to wrap their mind around it. And as we were all talking, you know, the thing is that we do all agree on is like no one is going to love our kid like we do, right? That is our child. There is never going to be someone in that school, no matter how great they are, right, that is going to love our kid like we do. And I think that what really is triggering for a lot of parents, isn't even so much the pronouns. It's more about if something is going on with my kid, I want to know. Like, is something happening? Are they, are they struggling with their identity because they're depressed? Are they struggling with their identity out of some other kind of, suicidal ideation or bullying or something else going on? There's so much that, parents are still trying to figure out about their kids. They're changing a lot in high school because they're trying to figure out their identity. And sometimes there's nothing wrong. They're just not ready to tell their parents about it, right? But I think that that's the real struggle point that a lot of parents have. It's more about they want to just make sure their kid is okay, right? And if they're struggling with something, they want to know because they want to help their kid. And so, looking at it from that perspective, for me, it's more about having more guidance counselors, for instance, in the schools, because that is who's trained to understand, is that kid just, this is just part of their process. They're just naturally like, this is where they're at, right? They're trying to figure out their identity. Is it they're trying to figure out their identity, but they're also scared of their home environment? That's a different conversation, right? That's entirely different. Um, do they just need some help on how to talk to their parent about this? Okay, well, let's do that. So that's where I think there's a little bit more middle ground about trying to figure that out. And then you just also need to make sure that if there's, I've talking to another parent about picking up their kid's friend going by the name they've always known them by. And when they go there, there's a different name, but they didn't know that. So the front office didn't know how to match them with the right kid, right? So some of that sort of thing just needs to be standard, right? You need to keep track of all the names because you don't know who's coming in the door, right? That's a safety thing. But then, all of that being said, the kids need a space to be able to figure some of this stuff out, trusted adults to help them get through it. And parents need to be able to trust the environment they're putting their kids into, right? That they're going to get that support. And then if there is something going on, like I was saying about early intervention before, sometimes it's not until high school that we realize that there's been something going on with this kid, right? And so, the guidance counselor can ask those right questions and kind of figure out and suss out what's happening. Otherwise, let the kid, this is not the stress the kid needs. The kid needs to be thinking about math and reading. If they're going by they or a different pronoun, all right, right? They shouldn't be getting the struggle bus from the teacher or the administrators for it. That's not their job. That's going to be between them and their family at the end of the day. Does that make sense? It's kind of like a two-road situation I
Yeah.
see happening with that question.
Yeah, and another problem that a lot of parents are struggling with, because I know I'm a therapist, and so I have
Right.
several clients that are in the FCPS, and these parents are tired of these bathrooms. These
Oh,
bathrooms in high school and
yes.
middle, there is so
Yeah.
much drug use. I mean, fights that
Yeah.
happen. I mean, just like today, I mean, there was at TJ there was a fight, and they sent an email home and said that it was a what did they say? School did not, your kid might have been late to school to class because of a health problem that a student had. Well, when the kids got home, it was a brawl and somebody got, I guess, went into like had a seizure after being in a fight.
Oh,
So it's like, yes, you're informing us, but you're really kind of informing us on a slant. And so my
right.
question to you is what about discipline? Like, how can
Yeah.
we take control of the schools, bathrooms, discipline in the classroom? I mean, it's some of the kids can't even really learn because there's
Right.
two or three kids that are just shutting the class down.
Yeah.
What would you do to solve
Yeah.
that problem?
And you're absolutely right. And some of it, I almost feel like talking to parents and talking to schools, like administrators and teachers who are also trying to figure out what to do because they are seeing an increase in behavioral issues. There's just no respect. you're always going to have a little bit of behavioral issues. They're kids, they're teenagers or they're middle schoolers or whatever. But it has gotten out of hand in a way that was not foreseen necessarily. But I did come across a statistic that they watch because they are concerned about discipline leading to prison, right? You remember hearing about the school to
Hmm.
prison pipeline. So
Hmm.
there's a statistic they use as part of their, judging the school. How many suspensions has that kid had? What it doesn't tell us though is what have you done when you start having behavioral issues? How do you delineate a behavioral issue that's like talking back versus bullying someone in a bathroom, pushing them and shoving them? There's levels, right? So 3 or 4 different levels of behavior that we need to worry about. And as you discipline a kid, what is that flow chart? What's that map? When a parent asks the school, well, what happens? The school doesn't have a great answer for that a lot of times. And I have a group of parents I'm working with at another middle school to help them figure out how to work with the school to figure out, well, what's this flow chart we should be looking at? There isn't one. Of what to expect when a kid is disciplined. If the behavior repeats, well, then what happens? Is there any discipline? And from the parental perspective, there is no discipline. The person that says, oh, I'm being bullied by somebody or I was pushed by somebody, they're the ones that are told to either sit outside the classroom or go to another class. So it's negative reinforcement of trying to stand up for yourself, but positive reinforcement for the bully to stay in the classroom.
Hmm.
And we're not addressing why that kid is a bully, right? Like, why are they even doing that? So there's like two things going on there. We're, reinforcing the bad behavior, but we're also not addressing why it's even happening. There's two things that need to happen. And I feel that statistic of, if a school is only really being held to a standard of your number of suspensions and you want to get that as low as possible, then you're not as inclined to put the hammer down when you need to. And if you have a kid who's brought a knife to school, that is a very deep situation that needs to be handled. That's going to be
Hmm.
different than the kid who's talking back, right?
Hmm.
Or disrupting the class. So and when I went to look at the 400s and we looked at bullying and what the process charts were, one, it wasn't very clear. It was pretty general. There's a lot of reading between the lines. So there really needs to be a lot more input from schools, even what they're seeing. We know that parents are unhappy. They send home these surveys. Sometimes kids fill them out and sometimes they don't. So we need a better way of capturing that data of what kids are experiencing and at what level. And again, each high school may have a little bit of a few differences of things that they're experiencing, but on the whole, there's going to be a lot of commonality. So we need to sort of figure that out and figure out, how we're going to roadmap a map for better behavior, because that kid better graduate knowing how to be respectful of authority, like a teacher or a police officer or their boss or whomever they come across in society, right? But also respectful of someone who's different than them. Maybe they don't, some of this stuff they're picking up from the parents. And so, they're just acting out on the things that they're seeing on TV. Don't forget the other peer in our kids' lives is the screen that's in front of their face, right? It's in their hand. So they need to leave these schools understanding how to be a respectful adult. And that's not happening
I
with
got
all of
you.
this. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that understand that. I definitely understand that. So,
Yeah.
one other question that I was gonna ask is about teachers. Let's talk about
Yeah,
teachers for a second.
sure.
We know that a lot of colleges are a lot of colleges are canceling their education program. There's not a lot of
Mm.
new
Interest.
students. They're like
Yeah.
they're done. So my thing is that if we're not producing a lot of new teachers, then that means that everybody's hustling to get the ones that's already teaching. And some of
Hmm.
our counties, fellow neighboring counties, they're raising the prices and the income. They're raising the income level, and a lot of people are running towards it. So with
Yep.
Frederick, how do you plan on tackling getting new teachers to our community? And then how are we going to pay them a wage that's comparable to our neighboring counties?
Now, and that's a great question because in the Maryland blueprint, in 2 years they're supposed to be at $60,000, right? That's the base. We
Mhm.
already have neighboring counties that have approached that or starting to exceed that as just a base salary.
Mhm.
So we're already behind the eight ball at that point, right? We're already behind. And some of that is rejiggering what the base is going to be and how that step up in pay, right? In terms of your credentialing or how many years, those sorts of things. And, as a nurse, there's some things that I feel in common with teachers. So we get the education, the bachelor's or the master's, whatever it is. And then when we go into the workforce, everybody else is telling us how to do the job. So money's not the only thing, right? There's autonomy in the classroom. And when your school or when your state is 49th in the country for autonomy in the class, which makes no sense. Maryland is an excellent place for a public education. Our schools are better than many private schools.
Mhm.
That means we have excellent teachers, right? For the most part. So why are we not allowing them to teach? Some of it is assessments, just over assessing. Are we assessing the right things? If something's not really meeting the goal, then why are we still using that assessment? So some of that stuff needs to go. Whenever we have another idea to say, hey, we should do this, oh, we're going to have the teacher be the one to keep track of it. So now, just trying to give them more autonomy and more space in their time and in their day, their week to do the lesson planning, to do the assessment of the students that they have. They also need smaller classrooms. At Abrana, you have classes of 35, 36 kids in a math class in fifth grade. Yeah, getting a bunch of fifth graders, 35, 36 of them who also have the IEPs and the 504s, and you're gifted that need to be more challenged all in one class. And that teacher's not going to be able to give that, individual care that each of those kids needs and check all the boxes that the county or the state has said she now has to do and, all those things. So there's a lot of room for creativity as well. So there is pay, but there's also room for creativity. And we're building, right? We're the fastest growing county in Maryland. We're at 10% growth. Carroll County is about 2.5%. So no one is touching us for growth right now. And that pace is continuing. So we have more schools being built. We're going to have to attract and retain who we have. So now we got to start thinking about affordable housing for our teachers. So many teachers who work in Montgomery live here. Pretty soon they won't be able to. So for instance, one of the things that nurses in Baltimore City and County, at least through Johns Hopkins, and it was a great idea, and there's got to be room for it with local banks here, is that you get a credit, a little bit of help on your mortgage when you want to put a down payment on a house, depending on where you're at in a neighborhood. So if you have a school that's busting at the seams and it's a brand new area, so it's not that expensive, or maybe it is, but it's a little bit more depressed, you can decide, that bank can decide how much they can give somebody to live there so that your teacher works near their school, or at least in their district, right? They're not having to come over from Pennsylvania or from the next county or whatever. So they can live and work in the same county. And the same is true. We do this for firefighters and for police officers and other necessary personnel. Our teachers are essential personnel. We're not going to have a healthy democracy without kids who learn what that looks like. So
I got you.
there's a lot of creativity for there. So, those are the big three. We'll put it that way. So
All
that
right.
pay, we got to change the formula. That's going to be a state issue. And we're already starting to see some pressure, but there's got to be more pressure, and there's got to be parental pressure. We got to get parents writing letters to the state that they've got to change the formula for Frederick County because they're not meeting the needs of every kid with the funding they're giving us.
You're absolutely right about that. One other question I wanted to ask you was you brought it up earlier, and you were talking
Sure.
about special education. What
Mm-hmm.
what do you want to do about special education? We've been in the newspaper, we've been on TV, we've been
Yeah.
exploited for how we handle special
Yes.
education. And the reason why I'm asking this is because it feels like some of these students that are struggling emotionally, we're seeing kids running out of the schools. We're seeing them. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
mayhem. And so,
Mm-hmm.
what do you plan on doing to address the issues with special education?
So special education does have a lot of issues, and part of it is And you'll actually see this if anybody's interested to see the end of January school, Board of Education meeting. And towards the end of it, there was a comment someone made, and she was right about there's so many mandates on the county budget for education, right? That special education tends to be the one that doesn't get the love that it needs,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not the one that's mandated to make sure that there are enough people in that school to take care of these kids that are coming in that do have special needs and need a particular educator to work with them. And that, when I read what had happened with the lawsuit and some of these other things that are going on, that's a big piece that's missing. In nursing, we work with all kinds of behavioral issues. We work with restraints. But when there's restraints, there is someone watching that person, taking vital signs, always seeing what's the earliest I can take this restraint off? What's the least possible thing we can do? And constant conversation. And you can't do that if there's one special education teacher and 10 kids and someone's restrained and there's no one to help them. So you have to have more special education teachers. We also need to look at how we figure out where the kids can go. Some schools are going to be more equipped, whether it's just because they have more space. My kids go to a school that's almost 100 years old, right? So there's limited rooms, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what they can do is going to be a little more limited than what another school might be able to do and have a bigger, fuller staff. And then we get to the point where you have to decide at what point have we said we've mainstreamed as far as we can go, but this child also needs to learn how to be in a world without their parent. So they're going to need a different kind of education. And this was true of a cousin of mine as well, that as soon as we were able to get her that sort of those needs met, she blossomed. A family can only do so much. We only have so many special skills, right? And we need outside help. That's part of our village. That's part of our community. It
Mm-hmm.
takes everybody. And, unfortunately, if I'm thinking about Strawbridge, that's what's in my mind. The county does not have the authority to look at a private company and say, do they have all the training they need? Is this the safest place we can put your kid, right? So we do need to look at that and whether or not that should be brought in under the umbrella of the Board of Education, because at the very least, then you'd have an elected board where there is some authority, which means the authority is back to the people. And we have more say as an electorate about what happens versus a private company where, the walls come down and you can't see past them about what's going on. That I can't imagine. That's so scary, right? That is just so scary. So as a parent, I really feel for that. And then you also have kids who are going to be able to mainstream through, and you don't want them to get lost in the system, right? They might take a little extra time. That's fine, but they'll get there and then they'll graduate and they'll be able to move on to other things. So, special education is a very wide, very big umbrella. And, the needs of somebody with, say, ADHD, which then kind of falls under that. They consider it behavioral, but it sort of depends on where you're at versus someone who may eventually turn into total care. Those are two different things. So we really need to be looking at the needs of the kids, the needs of the community, what that school is able to do. And if we need to provide transportation, we need to do that. No one should not, a child should not be left without the ability to get an education just because of transportation, right? So that also needs to be met.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Me personally, and I hope that you take a look at this when you get there,
Yeah,
is I want substitute teachers to be trained.
yeah.
Because our special education, if you look at substitutes, most of the substitutes are used in the special education rooms. And
Oh, you're right.
and to be
Yeah,
honest with you, most of them are not part of the IEP meetings. Most of them are not part of
you're right.
any of those types of things. And you have a substitute going in to work with these children that
Yeah,
need specific things to be met for
yep,
their care. And they're just trying to do the best that they can.
they are.
And
Yeah,
best that you can is not, that's where we get into this situation where we're at now.
yeah.
So this is my last question, and I thank you for answering all of the questions so far. But this question, I want to know if we have all these problems going on right now, and we already have a board of elected officials. why do you think some of these problems are not being fixed? And then, second part of that question is, what are you going to do if you get in this and you're sitting there with all of the people that are still left on the board? How are you going to make a difference with what you have right now?
Right? Right, exactly. And that was a big piece of one of the things that I thought about the most. And one of my particular skills that I'm happy to have is to be able to talk to anybody, to collaborate with anyone that may not be, look or sound or have particular views as mine, but I care about them. I care about their kids. And I think a lot of what happens when I talk to folks, and even thinking about myself before I really started studying, the Board of Education and kind of how it all fits together, there's just the communication's not there. You got whole parts of this county who feel completely ignored. And it's going to take more than just having a meeting in a high school once a month, or you can Zoom a meeting. These parents don't even know that these meetings are happening. They don't know that they can even send anything in. There has to be face-to-face contact. There have to be stakeholders in the school who can also help communicate that, not just through an email. I'm PTA president. You've got PTAs at all of these schools. That right there becomes a stakeholder of somebody that you can use. You've got some schools have a great football team. Everybody comes out. Well, you know what? Now you've got an opportunity to get out there and talk to folks, see what's going on. The board may think that we've got, oh, we know what people are concerned about. No, I mean, we might think we have it for this month, but next month they may have something else going on. And so there needs to be a lot more communication and collaboration. You look at redistricting. Well, guess what? We are growing. There are more schools that are being built. This redistricting conversation is not going to be over. And there needs to be early communication with our communities before they have completed a plan, because they need to be part of the philosophy that drives that plan,
Mm,
and they're not going to understand why Superintendent Dyson decided on what she did unless they're in it from the beginning, right?
mhm.
So communities really need to feel like they're a part of that planning, a part of what is making their schools a success beyond just sending their own kid to school, right? And making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. Because everybody does want to be part of a community. We're in Frederick for a reason. We moved to where we did for a reason. So that's the big thing for me is my willingness and desire and passion to just want to get more communities involved, but early, get early in, communication going. It might slow down a planning process a little bit, but if at the end you get more satisfaction and you get higher buy-in, that's always a plus. That's going to be better for everybody,
Mm.
you know?
So,
So
last thing, tell the citizens of Frederick why they should vote for you.
I care about your kid and I care about your neighbor's kid. I want everybody to get through these schools with as supportive a space as they can, to be brave, to be bold, to know how to fail and keep getting back up again. And it's going to take all of us to do that. And it's an ecosystem. And by that, I mean, the ecosystem is going to be the city planning. It's going to be communities. It's going to be all of us communicating and talking together. And I have a passion for wanting to get out in the communities and make them a part of the board and not have it feel like it's a top down situation when really it's the communities who should be informing the board, not the other way around.
Well, I thank you. I appreciate you coming on. I hope that all of my people that have that subscribe and follow me on Facebook, I hope they get a chance to listen to this because you have explained a lot of things. There's not enough time. There's a ton of questions we could ask each
Right?
other and go back
Yeah.
and forth. But these are the main topics. I mean, please go to our website. Can you tell people how to get in contact to see more about who you are and where and what you stand for?
Yeah. Absolutely. So the website is Janie Monier. So J-A-N as in Nancy, I-E, MONIER.org. I am on Facebook as well. So if you're on Facebook, you'll find it as Monier, the number 4, BOE, Facebook and Instagram. I have a link tree, which is the same thing. So all of those links are on the link tree as well. And we're adding to the website a little bit more background, but it's a fairly good sized website at this point. You can sign up for the mailing list. You can follow and like on Facebook and Instagram. The donation for Anodot is in there as well. And please message me. Let me know what your concerns are. This is how I'm finding out the bus drivers are having an issue, not just with salary, but respect. You
Mm.
know, bus drivers should not have to have second and third jobs just to put groceries on the table. You know, that's not how we should be valuing our employees. We value them by giving them something we also value, right? Our money and our time. So let's do it.
Well, I thank you very much for coming on, and I appreciate it more than you know. And I just
Oh,
thank you and good luck. And
thank you.
I know you got a meeting you got to go to, but I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate the opportunity to do this, and I'm happy to come on anytime. Just let me know. We could talk some more. I appreciate it.
All right, all right.